about planning. Okay. A Jewish bondman is acquired with money or with a document, and acquires himself with years or with yovel or with the deduction of money. A Jewish bondman woman has the advantage over him that she acquires herself with signs. One whose ear is bored is acquired by the act of boring, and acquires himself with yovel or with the death of the master. A Canaanite slave is acquired with money, with a document, or with an act of possession. He acquires himself with money through others and with a document or on his own. These are other words of Rameya. The comment, however, say with money on his own and with a document through others, as long as the money is from others. A large animal is acquired by Masira, and a small one by being lifted. These are the words of Rameya and Reb Eliezer. The comment, however, say a small animal also acquired by Mashkika. Okay, that's it.
All right, next thing in Kinyanim. Nechasim sheyesh lahem achrayus, property that has responsibility. Well, what we mean by that is generally is fixed property.
They call you a lien. They say have a lien on them.
Then you can have a lien, right? That's in general what we're talking about over here. Property that has a lien is fixed property, real estate. Okay. Nickname bekesef or b'shtar v'chazaka. So there are three ways of acquiring that. One is by transfer of money. Two is by transfer of a deed of sale. And three is by an act of ownership. For example, Noel got a pirate. If somebody goes in and locks the door. So how would it be that there's no money or there's no shtar involved, but you've got a chazaka? For example, let's say you've got a ger who dies without children. Okay, everyone has got an actual heir except a ger, because a ger is like a newborn child who has no relatives. If he doesn't actually have children after he becomes a ger, then there's no Yerusha. So, which means that as soon as he dies, his property is hefker. And the first person who walks into the property and shuts the gate is the owner. Because that's called a chazaka. If he goes in and locks the door, that's an act of chazaka, and he has taken. It's a matzia that he's now made a kinyan on.
I want to understand this thing. If a ger doesn't have any, a ger has when he decides to become a ger, okay, not involving his children, the children that he has are not considered. They're not Jewish, of course.
Then if they're not Jewish, I think if a ger converts with his family, I think we say midrabanan and they inherit from him.
Okay.
I think I'm not 100% sure, but it sounds like I know that for sure in the other direction, that if a ger's father dies, we do allow him to inherit.
Ger's father dies. Okay.
Okay. Right. So we do allow him to inherit, even though it's no longer his father. But we don't want him to say, I was better off before I became Jewish. Right? Because had he been non-Jewish, he would have certainly inherited. Now that he's Jewish, why should he lose? Okay. So and I believe I think that at least nowadays, if a ger converts with his family, we certainly would allow the Yerusha to fall to his children who converted with him.
And it has the same in other words, if a ger and his family convert, and the son is the oldest one, does it follow the same order?
No, but there won't be a bechora. I don't think there'll be a bechor by him.
But if he has a bechor after he and his wife convert,
and then they have children, absolutely. Then they're Jews when this happens, and it's 100% before. Okay. Anyway, we're talking about taking about kinyanim, and movable property. The only way that you can acquire movable property is by mashicha or the other things in its category, such as hagbah or masira. Right? Those are things that can we actually in that Torah a kesef is enough to buy these things, but Chazal made a gezerah that movable property has to be bought with mashicha. Why? because we don't want it to happen that the seller, let's say he's got a storehouse full of wheat, and he takes the money, and a fire breaks out in his warehouse after he's got the money. He says, "I don't care, it's not mine." So we want to make sure that the Kinyan happens with the Kinyan happens on the product, not on the currency. Okay. So okay. Beg your pardon. That's not the point that we're making over here. So if, for example, you want to sell your house and its contents, the contents are metaltalin. So you can't sell metaltalin with kesef, as I just said. You've got, normally if you want to buy metaltalin, you have to go and pick up the metaltalin. But yeah, so that was the previous point in the previous sentence. I'm sorry. Things that don't so non-movable property has to be bought with Mashiach, but nonetheless, if you're selling a house with its contents, then the kesef is enough. And all of the metaltalin are bought with it. He doesn't have to go through and pick up each individual thing. Okay. So then, if they are, now we say that if with movable property, it's possible to force somebody else into a shavua. Okay, so we learned, I think we learned this in shavuos, that if you have a if somebody wants to make somebody take the shavua that he was looking after let's say you have got a shomer, and the shomer was looking after some metaltalin, and he was let's say he's a shomer chinam, and or shomer sachar. Let's say he's a shomer sachar, and he's not responsible for if a robber comes. Yeah, he doesn't have to put his life on the line to save your stuff. Okay, so the shomer sachar Tana's, I was robbed. But the mafkid can say, I want you to take a shvua, that's really what happened, which he's allowed to do, and so the nifkad has to say, okay, I'll take a shvua that I was robbed, or you can choose not to take a shvua and just pay. Okay, but if he's looking after a landed property, you can't make him take a shvua. Okay, that's the difference between the two of them. However, if he's looking after landed property and metaltalin, then you can do a gilgul shvua and say, once you're taking a shvua on the metaltalin, you can also take a shvua on the landed property. Yeah. So each one of them has got its own chumrah, but when you have them together, then you can purchase them together. Okay. Okay, so when you have a barter, so let's say, this is when you have a barter, basically we have as soon as the one person has made a kinyan on the one object, the other object automatically belongs to the other person. He's taking two animals. He's switching a cow for an ox, or a donkey for an ox. As soon as the first guy picks up the donkey or has a mashiach on the donkey, the ox automatically belongs to the other person. Okay. Now, when it comes to the temple, this is sanctified property. Always has an advantage. As soon as the temple has acquired something with money, it automatically belongs to the temple. There's no backing out of the deal. But unsanctified property has to be with the chazaka. You have to actually make a kinyan on it. And if somebody makes a verbal declaration of intent to give something to the temple, it's like that's done and dusted. His words are as good as handing it over, as a case of handing it over in a secular case. Yeah, so we always give the advantage to the temple. Okay, once somebody said it, you can take that to the bank.
The
Okay,
house always has the advantage.
the house
Right.
has the advantage. Yes, the house with a capital H.
Right.
The bias. Okay. Kol mitzvahs haben alav. Now we switch contexts a little bit over here, talking about obligations of children to parents, of men and women. So a mitzvah that a mitzvah that has to be done to the son that falls onto the father. So when the father has a responsibility for his son, anashim chayavim v'nashim peturos. Only the father, that is responsible. The mother is not responsible. Okay. So for example, a bris milah or learning Torah. These are responsibilities that a father has for his children that do not, that if the father is not there, he's died or he's away or whatever, it's not a mitzvah on the mother, and if she wants to organize it, she has no chiyuv to do it. And for the bris milah, for example, the Beis Din must organize it, not the mother doesn't have to. Of course, she wants to, but so we call mitzvahs ha'av ala ben. However, when there are mitzvahs of the father that are on the son, for example, kibud av ba'em, yiras ein ba'av, that's something where the mitzvah it goes in the opposite direction. Echad anashim ve'echad nashim chayavim. So that applies equally to sons and daughters.
Okay.
Okay. B'chol mitzvahs aseh she'azman grama. This is a famous one. Okay. Any time-bound positive mitzvah, anashim chayavim v'nashim peturos. Women are generally exempt from positive time-bound mitzvahs. Okay, of course there are lots of exceptions to those, but the general rule is that they're exempt. And if it's a mitzvah aseh that is not time-bound, for example, mezuzah, okay, or what's a market, hashavas aveda, tzedakah, all these things are not time-bound. So women are equally obligated in them. Right, all negative commandments, whether they are time-bound or not time-bound, are equally applicable to men and women, except for bal tashchis. What's bal tashchis over here? We're not talking about bal tashchis about not cutting down trees. We're talking about bal tashchis of your beard.
Good.
Right? That only applies to men. And even if you have a woman who has whatever genetic abnormality that she actually has a beard, she is allowed to use a razor to take it off.
Interesting.
Okay. Ubal takif, the payers, right? Not rounding off the corners of your head. That is only applicable to men, not to women. If you have a woman who, for whatever reason, feels like she wants to shave off her payers, that's not an issue for her. Ubal titame lemeisim. And when it comes to Kohanim, Kohanim are not allowed to become tameh to the dead, but a female Kohen is. She has no obligation to remain tahor.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And that's it for today. Back to Gittin.
Okay. Chet Aleph. If one throws a get to his wife and she is inside her house or inside her courtyard, she is divorced. If he threw it to her inside his house or inside his courtyard, even if it is with her in a bed, she is not divorced. If he threw it into her lap or into a basket, she is divorced. If he said to her, take this note of indebtedness, or if she found it behind him and she read it and behold, it was her get, it is not a get until he will say to her, this is your get. If he placed it in her hand when she was sleeping and she awoke and read it and behold, it was her get, it is not a get until he says to her, this is your get. If she was standing in public property and he threw it to her, and if it was close to her, she's divorced. If it's close to him, she is not divorced. Half and half, she is divorced and not divorced. The same is true concerning Kiddushin, and the same is true concerning a debt. If his creditor said to him, throw me my debt, and he threw it to him, and if it falls close to the lender, the borrower gains. If close to the borrower, he is obligated. If half and half, they both divide it. If she was standing on top of the roof and he threw it to her, and once it reaches the airspace of the roof, she is divorced. If he was above and she was below, and he threw it to her, once it leaves the domain of the roof, even if it was erased or burnt, she's divorced. Beit Shammai says a man.
That's 3.
Was that 3? Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so
Okay. Hey, hey. On the day that Rabbi Yeshua ben Hyrcanus expounded, Yov served the Holy One. Blessed is he only out of love, as it is stated, even if he should kill me, yet will I put my trust in him. But still the matter is in doubt. Does the verse mean I will trust in him or I will not trust in him? Learn from what it is said, till I perish, I will not discard my perfect faith. This shows that he acted out of love. Rabbi Yeshua said, who will remove the dust from your eyes, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, for you expounded all your life that you have served the Almighty only out of fear, as it is said, man who is wholesome and upright, God-fearing, and who shuns evil, but has not Yeshua, your disciples, shown that he has acted out of love. Okay. On to one who warned his wife and she went into seclusion. Even if he heard from a passing bird, he must divorce her and pay her the marriage contract. These are the words of Reb Eliezer ben Yeshua. I'm sorry.
No, Rabbi Eliezer.
Eliezer. Reb Yeshua says, not until the woman who spins thread by moonlight gossip about her. If a single witness testified, I saw her become defiled, she did not drink. Moreover, even a slave and even a female slave are believed to disqualify her from receiving payment for her marriage contract. The mother-in-law, her mother-in-law's daughter, or co-wife, or husband's brother's wife, and a husband's daughter are all believed. But not, however, to disqualify her from receiving payment for her marriage contract, but only that she not drink. One more.
No, Kesubas now.
We finished it. Oh, okay. I didn't hear you say I can't.
No. You sounded like you knew that was the last one. So.
Dalit. The seducer pays on 3 counts, and the violator on 4. The seducer pays indemnity for disgrace, impairment, and a fine and the violator adds thereto what he pays for the pain. What is the difference between the violator and the seducer? The violator pays for the pain, whereas the seducer does not pay for the pain. The violator pays immediately, whereas the seducer pays only when he sends her away. And the violator must drink out of his pot, whereas the seducer, if he wants to send her away, he may send her away. How does he drink out of his pot? By marrying her, even if she is lame, blind, or a leper. If she was found that she had an affair of unchastity, however, or if she was unfit to marry a Jew, he is not permitted to keep her. For it is said, and she shall become his wife, implying a wife who is fit for him. An orphan, or one who was betrothed and then divorced, Reb Elazar says, one who seduces her is exempt, and the one who violates her is liable.
Okay. Shabbos.
Cup olive base.
Mm-hmm.
A stone which is on the opening of a cask, one may tilt on its side so that it falls off. If it was among the other casks, one may lift it and then tilt it on its side so that it shall fall off. Money which is on a pillow, one may shake the pillow so that it falls off. If there was filth on it, he may wipe it off with a rag. And if it was made of leather, one may pour water on until it disappears. Beit Shammai says we may pick up bones and husks from the table, but Beit Hillel says one must pick the entire table board and shake it. If we remove the table, even crumbs less than the size of an olive, as well as the pods of chickpeas and the pods of lentils, because they're animal fodder. A sponge, if it has a leather handle, we may wipe with it. If not, we may not wipe with it. The sages, however, say in either case, it may be moved about on the Sabbath and is not susceptible to tumor contamination. A cask which is broken, we may save from it enough food for 3 meals, and one may say to others, come and save for yourselves. However, he may not soak it up with a sponge. We may not press fruits to extract juice from them, and even if they float out by themselves, they are prohibited. Rabbi Yehuda says if they were intended for food, the juice that flows from them is permitted, but if they were intended for juice, what flows from them is prohibited. Honeycombs, which one crushed before Shabbos, and the honey with it flowed out by itself are prohibited. If Elazar, however, permits them.
Okay.
And we have Taharos. Okay, Yud base. Presses were coming in and going out of the olive press, and there were tame beverages in the olive press. In between the beverages and the olives, there's enough distance for them to dry their feet on the ground. The olives are tahor. If in front of the presses and the grape harvests there was tuma, they are believed to say, we did not touch. And similarly, the children among them may go outside the entrance of the olive press and relieve themselves behind the fence, and they are deemed to be still tahor. However, how far may they go and remain tahor? Only as far as we can still see them. With regard to olive presses and grape harvests, once he brings them into the area of the cave, it is sufficient. These are the words of Reb Meir. Reb Yossi says he must stand over them until they immerse. Reb Shimon says if they are tahor to themselves, he must stand over them until they immerse. If they are tamei to themselves, he does not have to stand over them until they immerse. One who places grapes taken from the baskets and from the expanse on the ground onto the wine press. But Shammai says he must put them in the wine press with hands that are tahor. And if he puts them in the wine press with hands that are tamei, he has rendered the grapes tamei. Yeshua says he may put the grapes in the wine press with hands that are tamei and can still separate their truma in the tahara. If one took grapes from a bad bucket or from an expanse on leaves, everyone agrees that he must put them in the wine press with hands that are tahor.
Hold on.
Skip something?
No, sorry. I thought you'd gone. I thought you'd gone ahead. Okay, never mind. Carry on.
He must put them in the wine press with hands that are tahor, and if he put them in the wine press with hands that are tamei, he has rendered the grapes tamei.
Okay. Sure.
Okay. All right. One more. We have nachos. Nachos, Yud base. If one says, I take upon myself to bring a mincha offering in a markabas, and he brought it in a markeses, or he said in a markeses, and he brought it in a markabas, what has he done? He has brought, but what he has brought, but what he has not fulfilled is his obligation. If he said, this is to be brought in a markabas, and he brought it in a markabas, and he said in a markabas, and brought it in a markabas, it is invalid.
So the difference is, does he say Harei Alai, Harei Zo? If he's on the flour itself. Okay, carry on.
I take upon myself to bring two esronim in one vessel, and he brought them in two vessels. And he said in two vessels, and he brought them in one vessel. What he has brought but he has not fulfilled his obligation. If he said these are to be brought in one vessel, and he brought them in two vessels, or he said in two vessels, and he brought them in one, they are invalid. If he said, I take upon myself to bring two esronim in one vessel, and he brought them in two, and they said to him, you vowed to bring them in one vessel, and if he brought them in one vessel, they are valid. In two, they are invalid. If he said, I take upon myself to bring two esronim in two vessels, and he brought them in one, and they said to him, you vowed to bring them in two vessels, if he brought them in two vessels, they are valid. If he placed them in one, it is like two mincha offerings which are mixed together. If he said, I take upon myself to bring a mincha offering from barley, he must bring one from wheat. If he said, I coarse flour, he must bring fine flour. Without oil and frankincense, he must bring them with oil and frankincense. Half an isaron, he must bring an isaron. An isaron and a half, he must bring two. Reb Shimon exempts him because he did not donate in the manner of those who donate. Excuse me. A person may donate a mincha offering at 60 isaron and bring it in one vessel. If he said, I take upon myself to bring 61 isaron, he brings 60 in one and one in another. Similarly, the congregation brings 61 on the first day of Sukkot, which falls on Shabbos. It is sufficient for the individual that he be one less in the congregation. Said Reb Shimon, but those aren't for the bulls and these are for the lambs. I'm sorry. Reb Shimon says, aren't these for the bulls and these for the lambs? And he may not be mixed with one another, rather until 60 can be mixed. They said to him, 60 can be mixed and 61 cannot be mixed. And he said, all measurements of the Chachamim are thus in 40 saw and one can immerse, but in 40 saw less, one quartov, they cannot immerse. One cannot donate a log, two lugum, or five, but he can donate 3, 4, 5, 6, 3, 4, 6, and from 6 and up.
Okay.
All right, I had a question of the one before, but I'm going to look at it again. So,
Okay.
Have a great Shabbos. Enjoy.
Shabbos, have a super day.
Thank you so much. Bye.